Okay, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. So good morning and thank you for joining us. We are here today for using beacons to increase student note-taking skills, and our speaker today will be Miss Maria Spade. Before we begin, we'd like to have just a few housekeeping tips. We ask that you please keep your video and microphones off. We want to try and reduce any background noise while the Zoom is going on. If you would like captions, please click on the CC at the bottom of the screen. We do have the captions enabled. And if you have any questions, please put them into the chat and the speaker will be able to get to them at the end of the meeting. To be able to bring up the chat quickly, you can press Alt-H. Please be aware the meeting will end on time. So if the speaker is in the middle of an answer, they may need to be cut. They may need to finish their question and then move on and answer questions offline, because we do have other presentations that need to begin on time as well. Now I would like to present Miss Maria Spade, and we thank you all for being here and have a great learning experience.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maria. I am the Adaptive Technology Specialist at Stockton. Want to make sure everyone can hear me okay. All right, looks like it. So today I'm going to talk about using beacons to increase student note-taking skills. I'm actually going to start with some of the things that led us to this point, and then how we actually started using this as a way to help increase the note-taking skills for our students. So first, I want to talk about some of the challenges that we see. In the higher ed setting, a lot of times we get students who come in with their IEP and 504 from high school, but they're not prepared academically. A lot of the accommodations that they had in school didn't prepare them for the college setting. They also don't have self-advocacy skills. Their family had participated in most of those IEP and 504 meetings, so they don't have those advocacy skills or those social networking skills. So they don't have the ability to kind of speak with their peers to get assistance if they miss something on the board, or same with the communication, asking the faculty member for questions. Everything in K through 12 a lot of times was given to them, so they aren't familiar with how to have those skills to get the information that they actually need. So these are the largest challenges that the students face in terms of what they have reported to us. They were not part of the discussions regarding their accommodations. I have numerous students who have come to me that don't even know what their disability is because they were never a part of any of the conversations. They're not sure what their accommodations were because their teachers just did it for them. There wasn't the conversation of what they actually needed. The accommodations that were provided aren't available in the higher ed setting typically. A lot of times they would get faculty notes. Sometimes those notes basically included the exam that they would be taking, where all they had to do was then fill in the blank based off of the notes. They were giving study guides of everything that was going to be on the exam. So they're not prepared on what notes they need to take to be able to be successful on their exams. They've never had to take notes in class, even those that didn't have a note-taking accommodation. A lot of times the teachers would put everything in their Google Classroom or give them handouts. So they never had to learn how to take notes on important information. And many of them lack time management skills. So these are some of the biggest skills that we try and work with for our students. Another large issue, especially over the past year, is in regards to anxiety. And one thing I've definitely noticed is that as the students' anxiety increases, their productivity in the classroom decreases. They have a hard time focusing, which means they're not taking notes properly. 17% of our students that registered with us last year actually were diagnosed with a physical or a psychological condition, and 26% additionally had co-occurring. And typically one of those diagnoses also included a psychological condition. So these are some of the most common accommodations that we do in the higher ed setting: testing accommodations, note-taking accommodations, audiobooks, and adapted print materials. So now that we know what some of the biggest challenges are for the students and some of the things that we're seeing, what do we do? Especially with note-taking, we look at multiple options. We have paper-based note-taking for low tech. It's limited training, inexpensive. We do have advocates that help with this, and I'm going to go over a little bit about what that actually is later in the presentation. More mid-tech, we do have electronic items that can assist with note-taking. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with the LiveScribe Echoes. We use the Sonocent note-taking program. Same thing with high tech. That one's going to be more computer-based, which is going to be the Sonocent or the Glean, which is their new program. These typically require more training. And for students who are coming in that never had to take notes, this isn't the best option for them to start with because they still don't have those skills to be able to necessarily be successful in the high tech without a lot of training. So one of the things that we started at Stockton was introducing the Rocketbook. We have peer note takers who take notes for students with accommodations. And it was proposed to us by my old director that we try out this new notebook that we called the Magic Notebook. So the Rocketbook is a reusable notebook that allows students to take notes. It's with an erasable pen, and they can load their notes into any of the cloud-based services. So we started to use this with our note takers. Our note takers would take notes in the class. We would give them the notebook and they would email it to us. We started this in spring. We implemented the application process to find note takers before. What we used to do is just have an announcement made. And by implementing an application process where they started to show us a sample of notes, we had an 81% success rate of finding peer note takers as opposed to the 40% that we were originally at. Our average GPA for the students who were receiving notes was about a 2.98 collectively. When we did the Rocketbook, that actually jumped up. We now had a 91% success rate of finding and sustaining peer note takers. So we increased by 10% in terms of being able to find them and keep them because the process to drop off these peer note takers became easier. Our GPA also increased. We also did a survey of the students to see if they liked receiving notes in this way. They were able to get them immediately after class because it is a cloud-based service. The students could take notes, we could load them to their account, and they could have the notes from their class potentially that same day, if not within 24 hours, which is what we require. It also increased accountability because we were able to see all of the notes that were coming in and make sure that they were, covering the material in the classroom. Obviously, we're not experts in everything, so we can't determine necessarily how great the notes were for all of the subjects, but we could tell if it was one line or if it was an actual class worth of notes. So we have been using this since fall of 2008, and it has been extremely successful. But I wanted to take it a step further because we still have a lot of students who don't really like to have the peer note takers. They want to learn the skills of note taking on their own, but they're not sure how to do it and they don't know what to write down on the board. That's usually the biggest concern that I get is I don't know what is important on the board to write down. And when I'm trying to write down everything that's on the board, I end up missing what the faculty is talking about. So in partnership with ATAC, we began to place Rocketbook Beacons in all of the classrooms on campus. We do have a few classrooms that actually still have blackboards. There's not many, but unfortunately for those where we're unable to do any of the installation, the beacons do have to be used on a whiteboard. So a total of 900 beacons were ordered, and depending on the room, the amount of beacons needed per classroom ranged from 4 to 16, and I'll explain why. On campus, we have 67 classrooms that are utilized full-time for class instruction and 20 that are utilized for part-time. So we intentionally did all of the 67 classrooms first in terms of the installation to make sure that we had enough beacons. And then the 20 were going to be done at a later date. We also have satellite campuses. So thankfully we do have enough of the beacons that were ordered, and we're going to be transferring them over to our satellite campuses as well for classroom use and installation. So what is a beacon? Rocketbook Beacons turn traditional whiteboards into smartboards by integrating with the same cloud services that the Rocketbook app uses. We place them on the whiteboards, and it helps with the note taking and the retention of information that's written on the board, because now the students no longer have to focus on writing everything down that's on the board. They can get that image directly sent to their cloud-based service, the same services that they're using for note taking. And I do have a short video to show you in case nobody has ever seen what a beacon actually is. If you can't hear it, please let me know.
Activated by the water that you and I drink.
You'll be saying wow every time you use this towel.
The blanket that has sleeves.
When it comes to collaboration, nothing beats a big whiteboard. But after you've created your perfect diagram, what do? Take a regular old picture with your phone, an image you can barely read, sandwiched inside a giant album of unrelated photos. But with Rocketbook Beacons, you can capture and share perfect whiteboard images with the whole team in an instant. Beacons aren't some expensive new gadget. Just 4 magic stickers together with your phone turns any ordinary whiteboard into a rocket board. Old whiteboards are white boring, but Beacon images auto crop and color pop, producing content more crisp and vibrant than the real thing. The Rocketbook app sees your beacons and connects to your whiteboard even from steep angles, so you've always got the perfect shot. Sharing ordinary whiteboards is normally such a hassle, but beacons instantly blast your content to the place it belongs in the cloud services you already use. Inside the Rocketbook app, you can assign up to 7 shortcut symbols to a location within Dropbox, Google Drive, Slack, or many other services. Simply scan your beacons and the app will automatically prompt you where to send it. So you can capture that customer meeting to a shared Google Drive folder, or blast that brainstorm with the team right to your Slack channel. To save even more time, jot down a couple hashtags next to your title and the app will automatically transcribe it to the file name. It's like controlling the internet with a marker. Looking to collaborate in real time? Whiteboards on webcams are blurry and shake, but with beacons, it's a piece of cake. Simply select Snapcast mode and your dry erase is in cyberspace. Just send out the unique URL and your whiteboard is broadcast live so everyone in the meeting can follow along. And remember, beacons use restickable micro-suction technology so they can easily be moved between boards and walls. Don't be a photo roll failure. Brainstorm like a boss. Strap your whiteboard to a rocket and blast off with Rocketbook Beacons.
So for anyone who hasn't ever seen or heard of beacons, that is what they are. They work by being placed in the corners of the whiteboards, and the little orange connects with the app. And when you take the picture, it does take exactly what's on the board. It takes a better picture when darker colors are used, and we do let our faculty know that it works best with print in terms of being able to go back and read it. We have very few who do write in cursive, but we still like to let them know that it works better in print. So they talked about some of the features. The Smart Tile feature, that is the one where you can do the double hashtag. So what that will do is actually put all of the notes in a set file for you. So if you are using this for multiple classes, then what you can do is take that information and it will automatically go to that particular class and you don't have to organize it, which again is one of the challenges that many students face is they have all these notes, they don't know how to organize them. This just is an added piece to help them with that. The Smart Search feature is a really good feature where students can actually search a word that is written in the notebook, and it will pull up all the files that actually have that word in there. So it's just like doing a control find on a document, only here you're doing it in the notes that were written on the board. So if you're going back to study for something and you're not sure what you want to look for, this is a great way to find it. And the Snapcast mode was also shown in the video. That allows, especially with Zoom classes, we still do have quite a few classes that are done via Zoom. And this allows the whiteboard to be shared more visibly instead of just trying to see it on a Zoom screen. and you just send out a URL. The student can open that up, and it will be set every 5 seconds to rescan and will automatically go to that student who is trying to view the whiteboard from an alternate location. So one of the biggest things that we needed to do is make sure that we had campus buy-in. That is definitely a struggle. I'm sure anyone in the higher ed setting knows that sometimes the campus buy-in is the hardest part to have anything accomplished. We did have support from our university's 504 and ADA steering committee. That is a committee that our university had started to review ADA concerns on campus. And this ranges from academic access all the way down to parking and transportation concerns. So we look at every aspect in these committees. So that was the first place this was actually proposed. And the academic access subcommittee was very, very supportive and thought that it would be a really good idea to bring to the classrooms. That led us to get buy-in from our provost and our VP of Student Affairs. So the VP of Student Affairs was in contact with our provost, who then went and turned it to all of academic affairs and sent them information on how this would work in the classroom, how it would benefit the faculty, and how it would benefit the students. So now we had everyone on campus aware of this and willing to assist. When we placed all of the beacons into the classrooms, we also hung up flyers in every room. We'll send out emails to the students, but as we know, not all students will read, not all faculty will read. So if they're not checking their emails, this is a way to also get the information out to them. We have a QR code placed on all of the flyers in each of the rooms, and it takes them to a website that goes over all of the information about the beacons, what it does, how it works, the benefits, best ways to use it, things like that. So in order for this to be successful and assessed, we needed to identify students. So first, I looked at the students who were registered for note-taking accommodations. Currently, about 9% of the students that are registered with our office have use of a class note taker as an accommodation. That's approximately 250 students. Out of those 250 students, typically we have about half of them who utilize pure note takers a semester. The number is usually half because even though they have that in their letter of accommodation, they may have gone through some of our trainings and now been competent. We don't remove that from their letter of accommodation in case they do have a class that they feel they're not confident in their note-taking skills. But a lot of times they don't use it because they did receive the training and the tools to be able to take notes. So a lot of times we only have about 125 to 160 students who utilize those peer note takers. An additional 7% of our students have use of an electronic device for note-taking, and this could be anything from a smart pen to a recorder to using their cell phone. So this is another group that we targeted because they're already using electronic devices. Many of them are using their phone, even if they're using a Sonocent or a LiveScribe pen. A lot of times they're using their phone with those devices. So adding this into it was not a burden for them. We have students that work as access advocates for our office. I mentioned that a little earlier. We started this program probably about 2 years ago. We did a pilot and we hired some work study students who would be able to lead workshops for some of the students that are registered with us. We have since opened it up to all students, so anyone that would like to get some extra assistance, especially those students who maybe came in and didn't feel prepared. We have a note-taking workshop that we hold twice a month. And in addition, we also do a time management workshop and a test anxiety workshop. So our access advocates, they lead training on how to take notes and what type of information to look for. In here, we are having them also test out the beacons to see what benefits they see in it, how they can spin it to students, because sometimes peer on peer works a lot better than us trying to explain it to students, and also letting us know any of the quirks that might need to be worked out. We also have a lending library that we are starting this year as well, in addition to the beacons, that has a lot of note-taking tools in it. So our access advocates are going to be using the materials from the library in addition to the beacons to teach the students how to have better note-taking skills. We've also identified select faculty to assist us with assessments. I have faculty that are going to do control groups in their class. So they've identified certain classes that they think would benefit from having this and having all of the students test it out. So some of the things that we found once they were installed that could be a challenge is that board size is definitely a concern. The beacons typically work on a board that is about 8 feet. Anything bigger than that, you would need to create a super beacon. So on the screen is a picture of what a super beacon looks like. Typically, you just need one beacon in the corner of a board. To make a super beacon, you actually need to make 2 kind of in the shape of a triangle. And for some reason, it is a lot more challenging to consistently make that shape on a board than it should be. I only know because of all the ones that we installed. The boards in our school typically range to about 13 feet. So you have those extra 5 feet that's not necessarily picking up good information. So we need those super beacons. But the other concern is that not only do we have the 13 feet boards, they have 2 13 feet boards directly next to each other. So that started to become a large challenge for us. We had a lot of trial and error with placing the beacons to make sure that you would be able to capture everything on the board. So we were able to do it and we did a lot of testing, but that is one thing that if you are looking into this type of thing for school or different location that you're in, you want to definitely play around with it before just installing it. Seating arrangements also come into play. Some of our classrooms have very weird seating placement and furniture placement. We have podiums that are directly in front of the board, kind of not in a good spot traditionally, but definitely not in a good spot when you're trying to use a beacon, because the way that it works is you have to capture all 4 corners. So if you're trying to capture all 4 corners and the podium is directly in front, you're missing that one beacon and it's not capturing it. So again, furniture placement, seating arrangements, all kind of played into it. We also noticed that the phone type and camera that you have could be a concern. So there are some cameras that are not as strong as others. I noticed my camera was able to pick everything up from the back row, but my colleague's camera stopped at row 4. So row 5 and row 6 were not able to take images if they were using her type of camera. These are all things that we have relayed to the faculty and we have relayed to the students, so that way they can test it out to find the best placement for them in the classroom as well. If they do have that type of phone where maybe their camera's not as strong, it's not going to work from the back row, then they know that they can sit a little closer and the faculty will work with them to make sure that that will happen. So in terms of assessment, we're doing multiple assessments. This actually was just put in for this semester. So I don't have any assessment data yet because GPA information wouldn't be out. And most of our faculty haven't done any first exams. So I don't know how, if it's helping anyone in terms of exams. But we do have, for the faculty who are doing control groups, pre and post surveys for the students in that class. So they're going to do a pre-survey to see how they feel for note-taking, and then a post-survey at the end of the semester to see if they feel their note-taking has improved by using the beacons. We're also going to be surveying the experience of all of our peer note-takers to see how they were using the Rocketbook and the beacons in conjunction to taking notes for those students with that accommodation. Not only will we survey the peer note takers, but we're also going to survey the students that will be receiving the notes to see if this helped them receive some of that information that might have been missing from previous peer notes. They said a lot of times it's very hard to write everything on the board. Same thing for our peer note takers, not just our students. The students who are taking notes are still trying to do the same thing, listen to the faculty, take everything down, and record everything on the board. And then finally, we're going to view the experience of our access advocates who will also be testing out the beacons and training on the beacons, as well as our other note-taking techniques, to see if they feel in terms of training that they were able to increase and get more people to attend the workshops on these trainings. So those are our 4 main assessments that we're looking at to test out how the beacons will be working. I have used these for other students just as a single accommodation. So this will be the first time that we're using it for the entire campus. And I'm really excited to see how it does increase GPAs. I can tell by the Rocketbook that I'm very positive that it is going to increase GPAs, since we did have that increase with the Rocketbooks. But I'm very anxious to get to the end of the semester to kind of get that assessment data. And that is everything that I have on the topic. If anyone has any questions. Is anyone using the Rocketbook now? So yes, we do have students who use the handwriting recognition feature. So far, the beacons state that they don't use the handwriting recognition feature. I have had it done, so I think it's still in beta testing for the beacons. But we do have students who have used the handwriting recognition feature when we couldn't get note takers for our visually impaired students. Our visually impaired students, anyone who is taking notes for them, we usually request that they type them. And when that's not available, we did use this, and it worked great. So I'm anxious for that to come out of beta testing as well, because I think it will be really helpful for the beacons. And there are ways to use these in other formats. You can use them on note cards to kind of create that cloud-based thing. You can do it without actually purchasing the beacons, but for the board, you definitely want to make sure that you have the right size beacon. So using that super beacon and getting it from them is definitely the best way to go for the board. Does anyone else have any questions? Anything that you're using to kind of increase note taking that maybe has worked? Is anyone familiar with Rocketbook? Has anyone actually used that? I don't know why all my pictures for Zoom has disappeared, so I can't see if anyone's doing thumbs up or anything. My Zoom froze. Of course.
I apologize. It looks like there's an issue with Zoom.
Yes, I've been trying to fix it. I'm so sorry
Yeah,
if
no,
anybody was asking
no,
anything.
it's not you. I had the same issue yesterday with another Zoom presentation that I was part of.
Okay. Yeah, because I can't see anything anymore. And actually, this is the first time I could hear something.
Does anybody have any questions? If you could put them into the chat and I can read them to Miss Spade.
Thank you, because I can't even see the chat anymore.
Has anyone found using the Cornell templates with some of the newer Rocketbooks helpful?
So the Rocketbooks that we purchased don't have the Cornell templates in there, only because the pages weren't as many, so we stuck with the traditional lined one. But our advocates are teaching the Cornell. So when they're going through how to take the notes, we actually have Cornell workbooks that they can work through and teach them how to do that in the Rocketbook. And then they're going to be incorporating the beacons into that as well.
What is the cost of using the beacons?
So for educational discount, they give you a set of 4 beacons for $12. So it was about $2,500 to do our entire campus and satellite campus. And it would depend on how many you need. Like I said, we have a lot of large boards. We have very large 13 feet boards, and they have 2 of them in pretty much every classroom. So that required us to use a lot more beacons than a traditional classroom with an 8-foot board would need. Are there any other questions? Anything about the advocates or the Rocketbook?
If you have any any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand and I'll ask you to unmute.
Do some students just archive their own notes into their own file structure, or do they always go through your office?
So the students who receive the peer note taking as an accommodation, the note takers always go through our office. So what happens is one of those key terms that they identify where they want the beacon picture or the rocket picture to go, that has to be our email address. And then we review the notes for quality and to make sure that they are being submitted and load them electronically into our student who is receiving the accommodation. They have an account in Accommodate. So from Accommodate, they can download it and save it wherever they would like. And then our note taker can save it wherever they would like, as long as one of them goes to us first for review. We used to do the paper way. I don't know if anyone used to do that, where we would photocopy the notes and then the student receiving the note taking accommodations had to come in to pick up their notes, which was not very effective because a lot of times we would have a stack of notes at the end of the semester from the student who never picked them up, or they weren't really being monitored in terms of being dropped off. So this was the only way that we would be able to monitor them and keep it anonymous at the same time.
So once you review the notes, you drop them into, I guess, a shared folder, then it's the student's responsibility to pick them up?
So it goes into their account. We use the Accommodate database, which is an electronic database, so they can access it from anywhere. The notes are dropped in there. And I can actually see if they're viewing their notes. So if they're not, I'll reach out to the student and be like, hey, notes are in your thing. Just want to make sure you knew that they were there, and see if they are having concerns accessing them, or don't need them anymore, or just aren't using them.
There is a question of, what does a note-taking teaching session look like? Do you use a specific format?
So they go over different formats. The workshop is kind of just an overview of note-taking, different things, options that are out there. Then they do one-on-one sessions with the student to kind of see what works best for them in terms of note-taking. The workshop, I can share that information with anyone who is interested in terms of what the workshop looks like, but it kind of goes over just different techniques, Cornell notes, mind mapping, anything that might help them to pick out things that are important in class. It's more of an overview, and then they'll do one-on-one sessions with the student to see what works best. And in that learning library, we have different styles as well. We have the mind mapping, we have the Cornell notes, and then we also have books to further assist on note-taking.
Are there any other questions from the audience? Feel free to ask. Does not look like we have any further questions coming into the chat.
Okay, if anyone does want to see what the workshop looks like or has any questions, you can email me directly. I'm happy to share that with you. I think our Access Advocate program was pretty successful when we piloted it out. We do have a lot of students who take them up on the one-on-one training. And sometimes that looks like a variety of things. They'll go over, time management with them. They'll do task analysis forms and do note taking. So it's definitely, if it's a program that you could start, I highly recommend it.
Somebody asked if you can share the YouTube link. She came in late and missed most of it.
Sure. It's actually in my presentation, which I was going to share. I just don't know how. I have to ask Mike how I get it up so everyone can access it.
Okay, and that would be, we can find out from Mr. Murata on that one. Any other, sorry?
Yeah, you could, if you put the link in, there's actually a shared note, like a Google Doc notebook. You can put the link in there, share it out.
Where is that?
On the schedule grid, there's a notebook, which is a Google Doc. And if you want, you could drop whatever notes or information you need.
Is that during the, okay, I see it now.
Yeah. It's in the schedule grid right below the Zoom link. It says I think it says notebook.
Okay. Yeah, I can share it in that, and then the YouTube video is in there. Does anyone else have any other questions? Do you want me to put the resource that we use for our workshop in here as well? I'm happy to share that in here if that's a good spot for everyone.
Yes, please, if you could.
Sure.
So everybody has access to all the information, because this is going to be a fabulous resource for people.
Yeah, so the workshop was designed by our students, and we actually have new students who are looking at it now to see what they can do to, improve it and get more people to attend the workshop since we've opened it up to all students on campus instead of just the students that are registered with us.
Are there any further questions or comments from Ms. Spade? We still have 5 minutes left, so feel free to ask.
Well, thank you everyone for coming and learning more about the beacons. If you do have any questions, like I said, please feel free to reach out to me. The beginning of the semester is starting to slow down, so I can respond to emails a little faster. First 2 weeks were a little challenging, but I think everyone is aware.